In the midst of a polar vortex out the windows of nearly everyone in the country, the Washington D.C. region SCCA Virtual Racing League kickstarts a new season of iRacing at Lime Rock Park. Every 2 weeks, we'll alternate between Group 1, Mustangs and MX-5s, and Group 2, GT3 cars, until the end of May. It looks like fighter jets in a cereal bowl, but this is the D.C. region SCCA Virtual Racing League, round number 1 from Lime Rock Park. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman for the first of many rounds this season, taking us all the way into the summer months. Tom, welcome back. This time from Lime Rock Park. A little different, though. We're not using the normal chicane here. We're actually heading to the West Bend chicane, which you see on your screen right there. A tight and twisty combination that's very rarely used, and a combination that I bet most people have never driven in iRacing.
Yeah, the DC Racing League is Virtual Racing League is definitely a staple here on SimTV, but they've still found ways to keep it fresh and exciting coming into this winter-spring series, and that's going to be the first of many twists that this season will take. But you can see there on the track map, we're running a very different version of Lime Rock than most people are used to kick this season off. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be really fun. I think a lot of unknowns. This is a pretty short race, 30 minutes around here. We've got a stacked grid, over 40 cars here tonight, which Lime Rock Park feels congested with 15 or 20 cars, let alone 40 to 45. So lots of cars on the racetrack, and cars that are not as different as they may look, Tom. We've got the Ford Mustang FR500S and the Mazda Miata MX-5. Now, the differences between these cars are pretty insane. The Mustang's got about 350 horsepower. The Miata's about 165-ish. But the weight is also wildly different. These cars don't go that much faster around here than the MX-5s. Only about a second or two difference between the top drivers in each category.
Yeah, about 10 years of production separate the two as well. So a much older race car with the Mustang, both in technology from when it was new and in the year that it was new, but also the MX-5, a much newer race car. And what that means is less than a second are going to separate the pole sitters on each class. Now with a split start, that means we might actually end up with a little bit less class interaction than you would normally see here at Lime Rock. And we have run Lime Rock in multi-class racing with the DC region multiple times. Typically it tends to be the TCR car and the MX-5, and the separation is pretty rowdy. I'm really curious to see how this much more compressed field, only separated by maybe 5 or 6 seconds from top to bottom in both classes, affects the shape of this race.
There is Paul Gibson in the 31 making a return to the DC region Virtual Racing League. And at the top of the screen, we've got a couple sponsors that are partnering with the series, as they have in the past. But at the top of the board, it's Andrew Pilata in the number 96. This is a car that he's very comfortable with, and I think he and maybe Kyle Herbst will be the ones to beat. We haven't seen Kyle Herbst here in a while. Here he is in the number 89 Ford FR500S. Both of these cars, H-pattern manual transmissions, each with 6 gears, Tom, but you're only going to be using really second through fourth around here for both of these cars.
Yeah, the Mustangs, you have a much harder time kind of cheating the system with flat shifting and not using the clutch, where the MX-5 you can kind of get away without using the clutch in a lot of situations. I think the Mustang is one of the most fun cars to drive. We're going to see these cars really slipping and sliding, especially when they get light over that uphill climb. And then this West Bend chicane is going to be really tricky for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a very decreasing radius entry, which makes the braking zone not only challenging, but also much more single file, so passing is going to be tricky. But also, as you can see, there are curbs, but the grass is there and very inviting. You have to thread the needle between the two, and staying off the grass is going to be relatively important tonight. We'll talk about that too.
And there is a 20 incident limit in the 30-minute race. Now 30 minutes is pretty short by these guys' standards. Typically they'd run either 2 races in one night or a longer sort of 1 hour or 45-minute race, but it's a sprint challenge tonight, and our field is pretty compact. We've got about 20 Ford FR500 Mustangs and about 25 Miatas. So my concern here, Tom, is that if you're starting in the back, you only have 30 minutes of racing to get to the front of the field if you don't get a good qualifying effort, which means the next 7 or 8 minutes of qualifying these Mustangs have, they better take advantage of it.
Ooh, look at them get light over the crest there. But in my opinion, Lime Rock tends to be a relatively single-file racetrack anyway, with the most obvious passing opportunity happening down into Big Bend at the end of the front straightaway. So I agree that the pressure's on even more. Now that you only have 30 minutes to make those moves, the qualifying is really, really important. And in fact, from other seasons, we've added 5 minutes onto the total qualifying duration, which means these guys get probably another 2, maybe 3 laps to get a look at this track. We're not even close to halfway through their qualifying time before we switch over into that MX-5 qualifying. So I do like that they get a longer time to take a look at this track and get that single lap in, because it's going to be super important tonight.
On the left-hand side of your screen, a new timing and scoring tower for this season. In the past, we ran everybody in one tower. This time, we've got it split into two. Top half, the black cars, those are the big bore machines. That is the Mustangs. Top 5 will stay steady. The bottom 5 will rotate. The same thing for the bottom half of the field. Of course, it's not split up just yet because none of the MX-5s have run times in qualifying, but the top 5 positions in the red category, those of course are the Miatas. Those will stay steady and the bottom 5 will rotate as per the usual here on Sim TV. So new timing and scoring should make it a little bit easier to see what's happening around the racetrack as Murphy Nichols makes his return to the DC Region SCCA with the Smoketown Brewing Company number 5 car. Currently in 10th, right about halfway through the field. Brake rotors glowing on these Mustangs. Tom, both of these categories do have anti-lock brakes, and you're going to be leaning into them just a little bit, but do you find that the Mustang responds to that ABS, or do you want to stay out of it as much as possible?
No, the speed lies in managing the brakes on the Mustang. You see Murphy get a big tank slapper through the left-hander into the right-hander on a no-name straight, goes for a big spin in front of Kyle Herbst, but really the Mustang less is more on the brakes, and I think that a driver that's taken the time to practice, it's almost like a light bulb. You feel it once and you've got it, but you cannot just jump into this car and get that feel no matter how much practice you have. You gotta get a couple laps of momentum going there. So here's another driver that has a ton of experience in another car, the TCR car. Elias Roman wins in the TCR car as a front runner all the time when we race that car. Here he is in 7th place, about a second off, a little less than a second off pace in the Mustang. So this thing isn't easy.
And an interesting note that Elias Roman also spends a lot of time in the Miata. He's decided to go with the Mustang this time around, which is a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't think that he would jump in that car, but lo and behold, he has done so. DJ Alessandrini is in the MX-5 category, and a new livery on board that car this week. It's a good-looking ride for sure. Got a cool spec map on it. Oh, no, he's not.
Oh,
and they split apart. Who is that? That's the 26 car. That's Alex LaRose in that machine.
Here we go. So we'll see those guys out a little bit later. Pilata still leads the way. He dropped another 2.5 tenths off of his qualifying time, and he's in the pit lane, interestingly enough, with 4 minutes to go. Maybe he'll reset for one more go. And then Paul Gibson has worked his way back up to 2nd, but Cameron Bidwell had leapfrogged him for a short period. Now Bidwell sits in the 3rd spot ahead of Kyle Herbst in 4th, and then is that Thomas Layton in the 5th spot. It is, and Layton is a former race winner in the GT4 championship. He should be a factor here as well. Yeah,
Thomas Layton, again, we actually first saw him in the DC Region SCCA Virtual Racing League in one of these Mustang machines, so he knows how to pilot these big old cars around here. The weight difference, these things weigh, what, 3,600 pounds, Tom? Compare that to the 2,100 or 2,200 that those MX-5s weigh. That's a 1,200 to 1,400 pound difference between those two cars. These Mustangs, you feel it around a track like this. This is not where they excel. We've got a handful of racetracks coming up where I think the Mustangs are going to be a lot different, probably a lot more enjoyable to drive, quite frankly. Our next event with this group is going to be at Watkins Glen, the Cup configuration, and there I feel like these cars will be a lot more at home.
Big time, yeah. A little more room to stretch their legs, but also, again, these cars, they're just kind of easy to make mad on corner entry. They get pushy really fast. It's a stick axle car, so they turn better on power, and all that means corner entry management is key. Here at Lime Rock, with these kind of longer, sustained, flowy, mid-speed corners, it's going to be easy to make a mistake, whereas a track like Watkins Glen, you got a little bit more room to breathe. We're also racing at Summit Point and the VIR South course with this field with the Mustangs and MX-5s. So I think we kind of have two tracks in Watkins Glen and Summit Point that cater to the Mustang a little bit better, and then VIR, that South course, maybe a mystery, but Lime Rock here, it's going to be a tight battle between even some of the Mustangs and Miatas.
And the other interesting thing is that this Group 1, Group 2 format is not necessarily new to the DC Region SCCA. We've seen them sort of alternate cars before, but because of the ongoing Spec MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge that Dave Fitzgerald also runs and not participates in, but also manages, we're running only every 2 weeks for this series, and basically that means that the Group 1 cars that we're seeing now are only going to run once a month. So you're not going to get a lot of reps in these cars. Now, they're fairly approachable, but I think the bigger concern happens in the GT3 cars that will be running at Road Atlanta, the full course at VIR, Road America, and Watkins Glen Boot. That's going to be a little trickier to just step away from those things for a month and then come right back to them and find speed.
Agreed, and it's worth pointing out also that there are 3 separate championships happening here. I don't know if there are any prizes. I haven't been told that there are, but we have the Mustang Championship, the Miata Championship, and the GT3 Championship. So we have drivers that'll be able to pick and choose if they can only make certain races. There are basically 4 rounds in each of those championships, and as you mentioned, they kind of alternate every other Wednesday, and we go all the way deep into May with this DC Region Winter Spring Series. So a lot of variety, but also not a ton of momentum.
There's Darren Heath in the 45, running 19th right now. One driver, Dave Fitzgerald, has not taken a lap in his Mustang. He will not get a chance to qualify his race car as the MX-5s are beginning to line up here. In the final 15 minutes, that will be the time for the MX-5s to make their qualifying effort. They are lined up, or at least ready in their pit stalls to get on rolling. And a bit more of these cars, it's going to feel congested, but these drivers will probably benefit more from the slipstream and that draft. Really the best passing opportunity, as you mentioned, Big Bend down into turns 1 and 2, and also that front straightaway. That's really the only place you can get an adequate draft in these cars to really make a move. So I bet you're going to see some drivers pair up or pack up to try to get the best run they can.
Yeah, in my opinion, coming into this evening, both classes, no matter what, it's going to be down to that chicane. If you're good at the chicane, you can obviously defend into it, but you can also set up for a run out of it, and that opens up the passing opportunity both down the front straight and on the brakes into Big Bend. So how much have you practiced that chicane? Can you visualize how flat and how invisible it can appear on entry? And then what can you do with it in the race? As the Mustangs tick over to end their qualifying session, it looks like Andrew Pilata is going to hang on by a 1/10 and a half. Over Paul Gibson there for the front row, and Miata's it's a fleet.
I just learned the other day that a group of owls is called a parliament. I think we've got a parliament of MX-5s out there. Who knows what level of wisdom they've got, though, Tom?
You know, crows are called a murder. I think they might be more a murder of MX-5s, but murder of Miatas? Who knows?
Maybe. Have a look at the track temperature right now, 94 degrees. It is a little cloudy out here today, so that temperature shouldn't rise too much, as it looks like. Is that Ken House-Seal, the first driver? No, Ryan Maloney, the first driver to peel out. No, who was that just drove away? Jack Chrissy in the number 6 was the first driver to get out and away. So he will lead this field around. And he didn't want any part of the funny business, Tom. He just wanted to get clear racetrack, which might turn out to be a good thing.
He might have actually jumped the gun a little bit, because now just the rest of the field coming out, I don't know if they might have agreed to separate themselves a bit or not, but the field is really spreading themselves out.
I think there was supposed to be a 2-minute crossover period, I believe, but I think he'll be able to get to run his own lap. There's Kevin Zhu in the 243 and Morgan Burkhardt in the 2 car. There he is in one of those machines, or buried in right there. He's got the OG Racing on the side. We've got a nice note from Greg Ginsburg feeding me some information about Morgan Burkhardt. 15 years old and 3rd generation DC region member. Both of his parents are flaggers for the Washington D.C. region. Grandfather is a flagger and his grandmother works timing and scoring. His mom Beth and dad John are former Mars ITC champions, driving first-gen CRXs, and has been karting for years, including at DC region solo events. Went to preschool with Jamison Huffman, whose dad Justin races FE2 at SCCA national events. So thank you, Greg, for that wealth of information. Glad to have you watching here tonight. 15 years old. We've got a handful of people in here, Tom, that I think are children. I'm only 22.
Yeah, and that is super cool to have drivers like that in here. So you were talking about Burkhardt, who's there in the number 2 car, almost punts his teammate, who you said they went to preschool together. Jamison Huffman's in the 3, just in front. And these two were 5th and 11th in practice. So if they can power up like this in qualifying, I think they might be a little too close, but they got a lot of time to figure this thing out. Having a teammate in qualifying here in the MX-5s is going to be super helpful. The thing that's not going to be super helpful is bump drafting, because typically the moment you touch another car, your lap is invalidated. So you have to balance that flow with your teammate, make sure you're not making contact, not pushing them or interrupting their lap, but you also can benefit them.
Yeah, again, you can't make contact of any sort or go off track. You have to have a nice clean lap between those white lines without any contact of any sort to get a clean lap here in qualifying. The 48 car going to hold him up. That's Cristobal Rodriguez in the 48. That's the blue car. He'll pull off to the left and let the teammates on by. They're not packed up very efficiently right now there, Tom. So they're probably going to struggle, but they got 12 minutes left to sort it out and get rolling as DJ Alessandrini jumps to the top of the board following the 27 car of David Stern. Kevin Zhu jumps to second quick in the 243 car. Jack Chrissy in 3rd. Make that Sam Scott in the 98 making his return to the DC region SCCA.
And Scott was really quick in one of the practice sessions earlier this week, but a driver we didn't talk about quite yet was quickest in practice tonight. That's Ken Hauseal. He's just behind, and I don't know if they're intentionally working together, but Hauseal is always a threat, especially in these MX-5s, and is going to be really fun to watch. Kind of a return to a battle we used to see all the time. Alessandrini versus Hauseal in MX-5s.
It is
tonight.
Rotating door of names here sometimes in the DC region SCCA. So many names, so many faces. But if you look at the front of the grid, it always is the same drivers, and that's for a reason. You know, a lot of the times you watch the MX-5s at Daytona in the real world, these cars can sort of seem like a lottery when you take them to certain racetracks, but especially at Lime Rock and especially with this group, it's not a lottery. And if it is a lottery, I would like to know who's buying DJ Alessandrini's and Ken Hauseal's tickets, because I want one.
Sure, and I think of the tracks we go to for this series, with 4 tracks on the docket, only one is going to be a lottery-style track, and that's Watkins Glen. The Summit Point race, that one proves to always be very interesting. This VIR race on the short layout is going to be very interesting, and then this kind of unique layout here at Lime Rock, we're going to see some very non-MX-5 looking MX-5 battles here. But also, to give you an idea, at the top, Hauseal just went to P1 with a little bit of draft. Alessandrini also picked up time. You see that the fastest lap in Mustangs was a 1 minute .1. The MX-5s have been close to a 1 minute .6 in practice, so there's going to be only maybe a second and a half spreading the pole sitters between these two categories. It's not a lot of time between the two.
Alex LaRose jumps to 3rd place. He's a current competitor in the Spec MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, which has its next round from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course next week. And Alex has not found a lot of success there. It seems like he has latched onto this ND Miata a whole lot better than the NC, the earlier generation car. And they do drive pretty differently, Tom, but I'm surprised that it's that different. It just seems like Alex hasn't quite sorted how that car drives differently, or at least has not found the consistency that he needs in the Spec MX-5 Challenge Series. But here in the DC region, he's mighty, mighty fast.
Well, sure, yeah, he's been fast in both, and I think the MX-5 Challenge Series tends to more be wrong place, wrong time, whether that be by his decision-making or by his I don't know, juju in life, who knows, or at least by the iRacing gods, but he's currently sitting 5th here, and we know he's going to be a factor. It just comes down to racecraft, and that's kind of harkening back maybe to some of the conversation we were having earlier about Burkhardt and Huffman. Are these younger drivers still developing their racecraft in a way that when they show this really great speed, when the green flag flies, sometimes they just don't end up in the best positions versus the other drivers that we've certainly talked about plenty of, who really know where to place the car, when to pick their battles, and just by the roulette of luck, or whatever you want to call it, they end up in good positions more often.
Well, I just got another note from Greg Ginsburg that Jamison Huffman's actually 14, will be turning 15 next month. You know what's crazy about that, Tom, is you have to be 13 to use iRacing. So that just gives you an idea of how young Jamison is alongside his teammate.
I thought you were going to say the crazy thing about that is it's past his bedtime.
I mean, maybe. Is it a school night? Or do we even still have school? I don't know. It's been a pandemic for so many months.
Yeah, it's probably under snow, but they've linked back up, the two of them. They've got a whole gaggle of MX-5s working their way through Sector 1 here. And again, I think they're just a little too tight. You're at risk of rear-ending your teammate, but also with the draft, you got nowhere to go. So you got to leave yourself a car length or two, and maybe they haven't quite learned that dynamic yet, or they haven't nailed the spacing yet. They still have 18 and a half minutes to do it.
And the reason why the microscope is on these two is because of the matching liveries. They're definitely going to be working together. Kind of a driver swap there. The two cars going to slide in behind the three. Bit messy transition, but they are not running too bad. Jamison Huffman 7th, Morgan Burkhardt down in 12th in class. So maybe a little bit of work to do, but honestly, it's worked out better than I thought, given every time we put the camera on him, it's been a little spicy.
Yeah, another driver I'm going to be really excited to watch is Ryan Maloney. He's a race winner also from our GT4 season, which I think that was our previous season, right?
It's been a while.
GT4 in this?
Yes.
Yeah. So Ryan Maloney also won a race in that series. He's been very competitive, and he's in the MX-5 Challenge Series as well. He's right here in the 25 car, and he sits 2nd now between Hauseal and Alessandrini. So this is going to be another factor up at the front of MX-5, and he's very savvy. Tends to be a little more quiet, and all of a sudden we're saying, oh, and Ryan Maloney's in the fight too, but always there. Maybe not quite like that, but either way, tends to do a really good job.
Sam Scott dropped all the way down to 13th, which gives you an idea. He was up in the 3rd or 4th spot earlier in qualifying. Goes to show you how quickly the deck gets shuffled in these MX-5s at this racetrack. Still 7 minutes to go, which is about half the time these guys have to run a lap. And Ken Hauseal still your pole sitter right now by 1/10 of a second over Ryan Maloney. Interesting to note, though, that Other than Darren Heath, all the Mustangs are ahead of them, but it's only by a 1/10 of a second to the 18th place car, Francois Brou in the Mustangs. So there is very little class separation at the front of the field, really, from the MX-5s to the rear of the Mustang field. There will be a class separation of about 15 seconds, and the MX-5s must wait until they come out of the final corner to accelerate. So they should get a bit of a gap and a distance, which might mean that we'll have some lap traffic to deal with, especially for the drivers at the front of the Mustang field. But I'm not really sure how the interaction is going to be, given that this is about as close as you could get these two cars on performance with this track combination.
Yeah, I think the bigger question for me is how close is the front of Mustangs to the back of Miatas when the green flag flies, because right now there's about 5-second spread between the slowest Miata and the fastest Mustang. Pilata down to, I think it was Rubenstein,
yes,
maybe was the bottom of MX-5s, right there in the 205 or in the 105s. So at 5 seconds a lap and a divide at the green flag, the Mustangs are actually going to get into MX-5 traffic a lot quicker than the MX-5s will reach the back of Mustangs, in my opinion. So that'll be more of a challenge for the Mustangs to deal with. And then also navigating that new West Bend chicane, or West chicane, I should say. That's it's a big question mark what you do there with traffic, because we watched in practice that it's really not easy for a Mustang to pass a Miata.
A big wide entry to this corner, then it kind of has this double apex right-hander, then a swing back to the left. Got to watch that middle section of the inside curb, because if you get the center of your car over grass, that will count as an off track, and you only get 20 of those before you're going to have to serve a penalty tonight. So make sure that you're keeping your car on the pavement at all times. Make that 5 minutes to go here in qualifying. Scott Merker is back in the number 77. Checking some other drivers. Nick Babin in the 41 car is back with us this time. And so is Zach Rubin in the number 7. He's currently in 9th. And a couple new names around here. I see turn 1. This is a treacherous spot time. To get the tires off track there, hard to keep that car back on course when you do that.
Yeah, and something about Lime Rock with how short the lap is, you see it's just over a minute long no matter what you're driving. Consequences are much bigger here by ratio than at other tracks. If you go off here and you lose 5 seconds, that's a way bigger percentage of the lap than it is at Road America or some other big long track. So mistakes pay bigger here than in most situations, and I think that mistake management and then also time lost in traffic are going to be big factors tonight with that only 30-minute sprint race to get things done.
Checking back in with DJ Alessandrini, currently 4th. Now, by no means is this a poor performance in qualifying, but typically you'd expect DJ to be right on the front row, but Sam Scott's jumped into 2nd with Ryan Maloney right behind in 3rd, so DJ's down to 4th, and I don't think he's satisfied with that. Looks like he's going back out to run another lap.
No, but it's interesting to see that he's got nobody to work with in qualifying, and I think Hausiel did do that lap with a draft. We weren't watching Scott or Maloney to see if they did so or not, but the deficit between the two, about 1.5 tenths, is about what I would expect the draft to be worth down that front straightaway. So theoretically, if any of them were not drafting and all of a sudden did get a draft, they might be able to tip Hausiel, but it's a roulette as to whether or not you can get it. Alex LaRose has just pulled in front of Alessandrini and now is pretty much at a perfect gap to get a good drafted lap, and this is not by accident. These two tend to work together a little bit. DJ definitely helps Alex with some driving and mental coaching here in iRacing. It's a challenging thing, and as we mentioned, Alex is a newer driver, and here he is giving the experienced driver maybe a little bit of a leg up.
So through turns 1 and 2, Alessandrini following Alex LaRose, and that was a pretty big advantage on the front straightaway. And my curiosity will be piqued coming out of turn 7. This is a 7-turn road course. Is it 7 anymore? It's probably more like 9 now with the west chicane over there. But coming out of the final corner, I'd expect DJ to, or at least LaRose maybe to peel off and let DJ go by if he's caught the rear bumper. I do think that they're actively working together. Big sidestep for LaRose as he crests the hill there.
And this is great spacing. We mentioned the two teammates before, they were too close. This is exactly the spacing you want to see, because look at how much DJ has been able to close up on LaRose, and he's got just the right amount of space to continue to close up all the way down the straightaway to that checkered flag for this lap. While we were watching this, Maloney leapfrogs Scott, so it's Hausiel, Maloney, Scott, but does Alessandrini get it with 2.5 minutes to go?
Cross the line, 101.795. Yes, it does. Puts him 2nd quick. And I'm not sure he'll do much better than that, because I think he's going to catch LaRose by the time he gets around, but he might try one more time.
It's possible. The top time in practice was a 101.75. Hausiel is sitting at a 101.74, so that tells me that's pretty much maxed out here. again, qualifying is important in this race, but also these guys are going to have plenty of time to race this thing out, and you can't just win it in qualifying.
No, and I don't think that drivers like Alessandrini or Maloney or Sam Scott will have a whole lot of trouble passing. I think it's just a concern. If you start 20th, the chances that you get a top 5 in this race are very, very slim unless you're very creative or very lucky or a combination of the two. This is a difficult place to pass on a good day, and especially with the traffic we're going to have, it might be a pretty big challenge here. 1 minute and 35 seconds left. That will be about 2 laps left if they could do it efficiently, and DJ will come across the line this time. I don't expect him to pick up this time through. Will he? Nope, 101.9. That would have been good enough to put him about 5th in class, but that is not an improvement.
There's one more driver that I recognize from the GT4 season and TCR season that we had. Jack Chrissy sits in the top 10 right now in MX-5, and he was very quick in the TCR cars. Had a couple poles, I think, in that season, and see how he takes to the MX-5s as well. I think last time I saw he was sitting 6th.
Yes, he's currently 6th with a 102.137. Not on track, though. He's satisfied with his qualifying effort and will remain there. And got a note from Murphy Nichols that for Huffman and for Burkhardt, no school tomorrow. Schools are closed, so they don't have to worry about that. They can focus on racing in the DC Region Virtual Racing League. And we'd like to get some prizing information out to you next week, because I do believe that they do actively have prizing for these series that typically involve entries for track weekends, so that's always nice to have. Alessandrini crossed the line 102.0, but did it pick up for LaRose? It did. I don't think he picked up any spots, but he did pick up time. A 101.995 was his best that he's run. So with that, qualifying will conclude here. Drivers that are on a flying lap will be allowed to complete one, but cannot begin a new lap after right now. So the drivers coming across the line will not get another chance to go. That's the first time I've ever seen the flagman actually wave the checkered flag. Come to think of it.
There you go.
Typically,
he better than the green flagger.
Yeah, I want to know if he'll do that in the race as well. I've never seen him do it.
Well, we called it pretty early in the session, the age-old battle between Haustiel and Alessandrini. It looks like they're going to take the top 2 spots, but LaRose did get a drafted lap this time through. He closed up on Alessandrini, but they're on 4-lap-old tires, and I think that's going to be a tall order for him to pick up any time. He only needs less than a 10th to pick up a spot, though. Maybe he can get it done. It's going to be tough.
Cross the line through the lap? No, it's going to be a 102.094, not quick enough to advance. So Alex LaRose will start on row number 3 in GMX5. Big Bore in the black, GMX5 in the red, Pilata and Gibson on the front row of Big Bore, Haustiel and Alessandrini on the front row for GMX5. You're watching the Washington D.C. Region SCCA Virtual Racing League round number 1 from Lime Rock Park, about to begin a 30-minute race to the end. And that West Bend chicane, that's the question mark, a new layout that we've never run here, not only in the D.C. Region SCCA Virtual Racing League, but also here on Sim TV in Lakeville, Connecticut at LRP. An unknown for sure, that twisty bit towards the end of the lap. We'll run through a little bit of your starting grid here in just a moment. But taking out of the racetrack here in just a second, Tom. Thoughts, and we'll go over our keys to the race here in a minute, but our first key to the race is managing traffic, and we already talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out with the cars being so close together. Again, I really think it's going to be a bigger factor for the Mustang race than it is for the MX-5s, but 30 minutes is a long time, and even the leaders could potentially end up overlapping one another, so we're going to see how that plays out, and that is heavily affected by those apex speeds.
These cars are very different in looks and sounds, but they are very similar at the cornering speeds. The Mustang got a lot of tire, it's got a lot of motor, but it's got a lot of weight too. And the speeds between that car and the MX-5 will be virtually the same in a lot of the tighter corners. So that's going to be a challenge. And also, it'll be a specific challenge in the mystery chicane, Tom, the new one, the West chicane, that is a newer layout that we haven't had here in iRacing until a couple of years ago. It's not a track that gets used a lot, and a lot of drivers don't have a lot of experience with it.
And many times, if you are using a chicane here at Lime Rock, it's the one at the uphill, not at West Bend. So West Bend chicane is, again, a big mystery coming into this race, not only because of the decreasing radius braking zone, but because of threading the needle through the actual chicane portion there and leading onto the front straightaway. I think the winner might be the one that is the strongest in that chicane.
And having a look here at our starting grid, it's Andrew Pilata on the front row alongside Paul Gibson in the number 31, and Cameron Bidwell alongside Kyle Earps in row number 2. Row 3, Murphy Nichols in the number 5. the Smoketown Brewing Station car. Then Thomas Layton in 6th, Forrest Landy 7th, Elias Roman in 8th. We'll let the rest of this scroll down the screen here for just a moment while we make our way through the Mustang grid. Other notables, Peter Lausen joining us in 13th alongside Greg Obadia. He's back this time. Tom Reynolds, Francois Bruce, 17th and 18th. And got a note from Dave Fitzgerald, Tom, that the winner of the series will get Track Night in America entry for class, well, I guess each of the class champions, Track Night in America. So that will be for the Mustang winner, the MX-5 winner, and the winner in GT3 as well. So that's good to know. We already saw our front row, Ken House-Seal and DJ Alessandrini for the Miatas. There's Ryan Maloney, Sam Scott on row number 2. Row 3, LaRose and Darren Heath in the number 45. Jack Chrissy, you mentioned him, starting 7th. Zach Rubin in 8th, Kevin Zhu 9th. Morgan Burkhardt, along with his teammate Jamison Huffman, 10th and 13th. 14 and 15 years old, respectively, making their first starts in the DC Region Virtual Racing League. And rounding out the rest of the field here, Tom, we've got 46 cars making a start here tonight for round number 1 at LRP.
It's going to be busy. You see them rolling into West Bend for the first time. A split start for the Mustangs and the MX-5s with a delayed start. Those MX-5s go when they get to the green flag, not when the green flag for the Mustangs flies. So I would suspect maybe 10 to 15 seconds between the two categories, and that's going to be, well, that's closing in on half a lap here at Lime Rock. So I think it's maybe only 10 to 15 laps before the Mustangs catch the MX-5s, but do the MX-5s catch the Mustangs too? We're going to find out pretty quick.
And here they come onto the back straightaway now, getting separated again. A fairly even class split. Again, 20 Mustangs and 26 MX-5s. And a couple MX-5s I don't think took the grid. Louis Alessi didn't take the grid. Charles McCabe didn't take the grid. David Thompson. But there's that gap. It's not a huge gap right now. Ken House-Seal is in control of it.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Ken leaving a very small gap. It looks like he's continuing to drop back just a little bit, but that's maybe 5 to 7 seconds between them, which is not a long way to go before they stack up at turn 1 for House-Seal.
Navigating through that very tight and twisty chicane. 30 minutes on the clock for the Washington, D.C. Region Virtual Racing League, round number 1 of Group 1. Packing up, pairing up, shuffle the deck. We'll declare you a winner in each category at the end of 30 minutes time, about 30 laps from now. Time to go racing from Lime Rock Park. Mustangs take the green. Into turn 1, Pilata leads the way. Kyle Herbst gets shuffled out just a bit as they make their way through the first corner. Elias Roman tucks in line. So far so good as the Miatas take the green. Already 3 wide in the midst of that pack.
Yeah, top 6 and Mustangs all getting single file and much more single file here at the front. House-Seal's already got the preferred line, and Maloney also picks up third place single file over Scott. They're going to go cleanly through West Bend. LaRose is still in line as well, and then they're double file a little further back, but very clean until that one car tank slaps off into the grass outside exiting West Bend. I think everybody else is through clear, so it's just the 125 of Firas Barzinji who had jumped up to 6th in qualifying. Heartbreaking for him.
Trouble for David Stern and Jeff Barlow. They're also torn up at the exit of turn number 3. Trouble, they're in the West Bend chicane. Big crash there. Stack up and roadblock at the top of the hill. That's going to be real bad here. Bobadia's backwards. He's got to get out of the way before the Miatas get here. But dramas as they tried to negotiate the tight and twisty chicane as the Miatas string on by. It was just an absolute mess. Nowhere for anybody to go.
And this has got to be one of the most single-file chicanes anywhere in the service for iRacing, and that's a nightmare for the MX-5s as well because Obadia was rejoining the track onto the driving line. He had no choice. He could stay at the grass or rejoin the track. He's crabbing into pit lane, but it was the leaders that got held up exiting West Bend chicane and now are basically into damaged Mustang traffic. They've got 28.5 minutes to go dealing with this, and that's going to be horrible for Ken House-Seal. As soon as Alessandrini might make a move, it becomes a nightmare for him too.
He's going to have to get really busy in just a moment. Elias Roman, the next driver up the road. 17 Mustangs out in front of this Miata field. Meanwhile, in 5th place, Murphy Nichols has Thomas Layton behind him. That's the 40 car, the bright yellow Motorcraft machine, chasing the Smoketown Brewing Station car down the hill. This fast right-hander to end the lap. And they're losing a little bit of ground to those front 4.
Whoa, look at the big tank slapper for Nichols. He goes off. There's a big power on the back of this Mustang, and he still hasn't caught it yet, continuing to tank slap all the way almost to the start-finish line. So Leighton goes back by. Nichols drops one position, but saves it, and heavy damage on a ton of these Mustangs. You can see the grimace on the front of the car leading the pack here into West Bend. And also for the number 4 car, Forrest Landy, as he's trying to salvage what was a terrible first run through that West Bend chicane for so many drivers.
Yeah, a lot of stacking up has caused so many of these drivers to deal with all that damaged car off the background. That's Daniel Duncan. He's going to go wide and lose a couple more spots. They're 3 wide for a moment, and here come the Miata leaders right in the midst of it. Halsey slams into the back of him, damaging the front of that car.
Just light touch on the right front. I think he'll be okay for the most part, but it's proving right now these Mustangs are not having the best time controlling the vehicle on the first couple of laps, and it is worth saying that the cold tires on these Mustangs are a nightmare. They truly are. It takes a while for them to come up. The MX-5s deliver much better early on in these races, and so far we've seen that take shape very much in front of our eyes.
Well, the Miata field is split up nicely, giving them some room, but look at this. There is chaos in front of the Miata leaders right now, and this is like fighter jets in a cereal bowl. Oh, stack up, they're crashed.
Man, horrible to see.
Oh.
2 of our runners in the Miatas
more of them.
all taken out, and they're continuing to bounce off of one another. LaRose is through, Scott's taken out.
Everybody.
Zach Rubin gets collected as well. I don't know how many people are even left in this race. Kevin Zhu looks like he might have gotten through. So did our teammates that we spent time talking about earlier.
Yeah, they came out of the corner. The car just stopped. Who was that just stopped dead?
I think Elias Roman was checking up for the car just in front. He had already been involved in the incident earlier on. Basically parked it with the entire Miata field coming through that single file chicane. And now it's just management for all these top drivers for the rest of the night.
Well, this is your race leader, Ryan Maloney, in the 25 car. This has gone from bad to worse at the front of the field. Ryan Maloney nursing a crippled car around. Sam Scott has also got major damage. I think Kevin Zhu's got some fenders pushed and shoved, but look at Jamison Huffman, the 14-year-old. Car doesn't have a scratch on it. There he is running in 4th in class. Well, maybe it's got a scratch.
I think a little bit of damage on the left front, but certainly nothing compared to the top 3 cars. The question is, how bad is Maloney's ar? Is his suspension sound, and does he have enough of a buffer for the rest of the field? Because last time they crossed the start-finish line, it was 3.5 seconds, and that might be more than enough to manage what is clearly a completely broken race car. No hood, no nothing. Does he pit?
He's got a meatball. He's got a meatball flag calling him in. That will turn the lead over to Sam Scott in MX-5. No major dramas in Mustangs other than the cars that have already crashed. No major passing opportunities happening there. Here's Scott Merker and Richard Spicer. Spicer in the 65. Merker goes on the defense into turn 1. There's Zhu on Jamison Huffman, but Huffman moves to 2nd.
So Huffman certainly got the best mechanical, certainly the best machine, I should say, underneath him right now as he passes Zhu, and Spicer still trying to find a way past Merker. That's all for the top 5. And the other thing that this is going to cause, we already said the Mustangs are going to catch the Miatas pretty fast. This has been a terrible start for the back of the Mustangs and the entire Miata field. The leaders of the Mustangs have to be catching them pretty soon.
So drivers that are recorded as out, well, there's only a handful of them. Most drivers have gotten back rolling, surprisingly enough. So a little bit of relaxation happening now in MX-5. Taberzi in the 121 has just gotten by Merker for 5th. They're going to try to cross him back over. Brian McCrea in the 47. That's the orange car in the background. This is the battle for the top 5 spot right now between these two.
Ooh, Merker tried the outside through the downhill. Didn't quite work. I wonder if that car looks like it's maybe a little bit damaged, but otherwise okay. Taberzi, a big charge up the field.
33rd and 19th in overall. Again, that would be a pretty sizable climb, 14 spots. So started about tail of the field in MX-5. And up the road, you see Spicer on the tailpipes of Kevin Zhu. This is for 3rd in class.
Look at the gap at the front. We mentioned it was 3.2 seconds a little bit while ago. Huffman to Scott now is basically nothing. 7/10. It's going to be there within a couple laps, and I think the damage on Scott's car might just be a little bit too much. Somehow Huffman getting through mostly unscathed is really a blessing. With 23 minutes to go, I think it's the clean race cars that are going to come out on top. I don't know that you can manage the damage that long and still have a good result.
It's like short track racing on a Saturday night is what it looked like out there for a little while. Back in Mustangs, here's Andrew Chow. That's the damaged car in the front. Will Robbins right behind, and then Peter Lausen. This is a battle for 9th. Whoa, big dive. That almost didn't work.
Yeah, and I think the lead car in this pack is the same problem as a lot of the MX-5s, where they're going to be slow down the straightaways. Lausen looks to the outside of the uphill. This is a bold move. tries to maybe trick him into an over-under, but it doesn't pay off. The rear end gets loose over the uphill, and then towards the front, the leaders are in traffic.
It's heavy traffic on the front straightaway. Andrew Pilata has through it. Paul Gibson passes the 159 car, that being Joshua Rubenstein. Kyle Herbst, Thomas Layton poking their way through. Pilata's got a 1.4 second lead, but then he could throw a blanket over second, third, fourth, and fifth. So it's going to be a pretty tight battle through the back half of the Miata field here.
Pilata's lead was up to about 1.8 seconds at one point, so it's come down and gone back up slightly. It's ebbing and flowing, but Pilata's certainly in a little bit of a good position where he can pick and choose his positions. If you have that little bit of a breather, you can be patient and you can get away with things. If you're in a big line of cars, it's a lot harder to get away from somebody like Gibson, Herbst, Layton, Bidwell are all in that scenario. So the guys in second through fifth have to be a lot more careful in traffic. They don't have the luxury as cars continuing to struggle with this westbound hairpin.
It is definitely a challenge, and we sort of knew it was going to be the case. I didn't think it was going to turn into such a roadblock, though. I thought we'd see some drivers go off and get some slowdowns, but not all-out crashes like that. Herbst on the defense down the front straight from Layton, who has a run, but not enough of one to get alongside.
I think Layton had just picked up fourth as well, so he's on a bit of a charge. Deep on the brakes down into West Bend to start the next lap with 21.5 minutes to go. And I think Layton looks pretty strong. Again, these guys all have to be pretty careful, though, to not lose time to Pilata, but Pilata's gap is shrinking still.
It's still coming down. 1.2 seconds is the gap. You see the blue and white car up the road. Meanwhile, in MX-5, Sam Scott and Jamison Huffman, 4/10 separate them. Richard Spicer, though, is maybe the one we should keep our eye on, charging forward at a fervent pace right now, and those front two are going to get spicy here in a moment.
That's another driver that we've seen have great success in certain series throughout the last year and a half. But look at Huffman drafting down the front straightaway easy. It shows a nose up the inside of West Bend. You can hold the outside if you have the lead. And Scott looks like he's going to do it, but no, still overlap. Huffman uses the curb to great advantage up the inside. Now, unfortunately, inherits the outside and tucks back in line. But that 3 car, I think it's only a matter of time. Look at the damage on the back of the 98.
Trying to cross him over, bounces over the curb at the exit of turn 3. And now runs down the back straightaway here. And I think Huffman's got the advantage. And normally I would say he shouldn't rush this and should take his time, but he's got Spicer approaching, and that Miata in the rear view mirror is getting a lot larger, and that means that the intensity is there to get by this 98 car before Spicer gets to you. If you can have Sam Scott hold up Richard Spicer, then you can just try to drive away.
Agreed, and you can also see just how much quicker the 98 is through the corners. I think you just lost a couple of car lengths, but unfortunately it's all going to go away. The other thing we've seen is how unpredictable and how uncontrollable the traffic has been in this race, specifically at that point. So if Huffman can take the point early on here, buy himself a little bit of space, he's going to have a lot more room to breathe. But honestly, I think Spicer's the quick car right now.
He is the quick car, a 102.484. That was his best lap of the entire race just one lap ago. You can see the Mustang between them. That's the 29 of Andrew Chow. That is actually for overall position. And up front, there is a battle for the lead in the Mustangs, and a pass for the lead. Paul Gibson, they crash.
Oh, man, and that's going to put Herbst to the top. Layton goes through, and so does Gibson, but Bidwell went through. It was Pilata and Gibson. It looks like Gibson was just in a little too deep, but we didn't get enough of a look at it to really make a call. Here's the run down the front straightaway, and I think he's going to get a little big for his britches here up the inside into, yeah, way too deep.
Yeah, it's too deep and not enough room there. Alessandrini gets body slammed, and both those cars spin off for the top spot. A messy move there. That will push Pilata back to 4th. Kyle Herbst inherits the race lead, now moving into some traffic here. It's been a wild day. This is not the kind of racing that we're accustomed to seeing in DC Region SCCA. They've gone many races almost incident-free, but today has been a revolving door of drivers heading down pit lane to repair bodywork.
Yeah, I spent the whole season for the GT3 TCR series calling it the greatest racing you'll find anywhere, real or sim, and this has been quite the opposite, if I must say, but I think that they'll be able to snap pretty quickly back into form for next week. I think this is a different challenge that they weren't exactly used to, but Herbst overtaking a freshly repaired second place Miata, and Bidwell with a huge lunge of the inside of Layton down into West Bend.
Yeah, he took it decisively there. That's the 25 Miata of Ryan Maloney, who's the first car one lap down in the MX-5 category. Back to MX-5, speaking of Sam Scott and Jamison Huffman, they have not actually traded spots just yet, and Spicer hasn't edged that much closer. He still is almost there, but not quite there yet. We're nearing halfway in this race. Feels like we've been out here for 25, 30 minutes already, but it has been a long day for some drivers out here, I'll tell you that.
Well, right now the blessing for our leader in MX-5, Scott, is his strength in the West Bend chicane, I should say. Remember, he started in 3rd or 4th overall on the second row of MX-5s. Huffman behind started in either 10th or 13th, I can't remember. So the raw pace of these two cars when apples to apples, obviously the 98 takes the cake, but it looks like right now with the damage, they're about even. Spicer has run them both down though, so I think the 65, if he can put them a couple more clean laps together, maybe pick up a spot or two, will be in a great spot.
Spicer almost went off big time at the exit of turn 2. Paul Gibson has gone off in the West Bend area, and we'll reset back to the pits. It has been not a great day for Gibson. He will not finish this race out. Kyle Herbst in the middle of some traffic, pulling away the 1.2 seconds on Cameron Bidwell.
Pulling away big time. I think that was probably a root of that lunge that Bidwell made down into West Bend a couple laps ago. You see the big wiggle again, but there you get this problem where you want to make the pass on the MX-5 and you know they're going to hold you up just a little bit, but you got nowhere to go with it. And now Bidwell is going to lose a couple more car lengths to our race leader before he can finally show the nose down and again compromise his racing line through the downhill. So he's just lost a lot of time anytime that kind of thing happens.
So he's through. Thomas Layton's going to squeeze to the left. That was dicey. That's the 37 car. 37 Miata, who I'm looking down the order to try to find. Charlie Abel, who is currently 9th in class. So Mustangs have sorted out for the time being, back to MX-5s. And it looks like Huffman's made the pass on Sam Scott. They've traded spots.
Maybe finally got a run through the West Bend chicane, was able to close up and make the lunge down into the first corner. And now I suspect we might see him kind of pull away, but also Scott will inherit the good aerodynamics of our new leader with the less damage on the number 3 car. And he's going to kind of get a little bit of help down that front straightaway, which is where he was certainly least lacking, I should say. But Jamison Huffman, great to see this driver up. Was this the driver that started 10th or 13th?
Yeah, this was the driver that started in the top 10 earlier in this race.
10th to the lead.
Yeah. So driving forward pretty nicely too, and staying out of trouble in the very early parts of this race. Kyle Herbst out of the lead in the Mustangs. He's spun out or something because Cameron Bidwell is now your race leader.
Don't see any damage on that car, but now Layton wants it. He's drilling the nose up the inside. This is a busy section of track, almost 3 wide up the turn in for West Bend, but Bidwell with the lunge a couple laps ago, it's paid off. He takes the lead and now is bottled only by Kevin Zhu. The rest of the field still dealing with MX-5's 2x2. This is chaos.
I would go back and show you the replay, but I think it's more important to stick on what's happening right now as they negotiate traffic here for the overall race lead. Bidwell to the right, to the left, goes by the 243 at Kevin Zhu. Layton's going to try to follow him through up on the outside. They were instructed in the driver's meeting to stay to the right. The slower cars, they're going to touch at the exit. They're going to crash hard right in the middle of the field. No!
And that's why the slow cars always need to go left. They were advised poorly in the driver's meeting because the typical typical etiquette is the slow cars stay left for that very reason. More factors in this race taken out, unfortunately, over the crest of this one, and a bunch of cars taken out because they had nowhere to go.
Kyle Herbst, big impact there. The 121 also crashed. That was Frank Taberzi. Cameron Bidwell now inherits a 6-second lead over Andrew Pilata. Murphy Nichols up to 3rd. It is just survival of the fittest right now. And we're going to go 3 wide here down into turn 1. Murphy Nichols sees the opportunity, will dive up underneath the 26 of LaRose, who is currently running 9th in class. And then Charlie Abel, that 37, that's 8th.
Splits them for a moment and then tries for the outside in the left-hander. It's going to be tough in that Mustang, but makes it work. And again, at the front, I'm actually really surprised in the Mustangs to see Pilata less than 7 seconds out of the lead after getting spun down into the first corner a couple of laps ago. He did not lose a ton of time and also didn't get a bunch of damage. So this car might actually still have a hope for the win. He's got a really long way to go. He doesn't even have a visual on Cameron Bidwell right now, but we've seen how quickly things can change here.
Pretty quickly is the answer to that question. And working through some lap Miata traffic up in front of MX-5, though, it's still Jamison Huffman. And you see that trio of Miatas behind. That's Sam Scott 2nd, Richard Spicer 3rd. And that car behind him is the 2 car, who is not on the lead lap. That's Morgan Burkhardt, Jamison Huffman's teammate, who is 20th in class, 1 lap down.
Well, he's not going to give him any break because his teammate is leading, and any amount that he can slow these guys up just helps his teammate. So if he's thinking and if he's seeing his relative screen, he can actually help his teammate a little bit here. But as we suspected, Huffman started to pull away from Scott, and now it's Spicer who's got a lot of pressure on the back of the 98 car. And this is just a nightmare for Scott because he just cannot run the same raw pace down the front straightaway as the cars around him right now.
Two-car almost got in the fence at the exit of the uphill area. Car gets light over that crest and it'll just sidestep. There is the 6. That is, I believe, Jack Chrissy, who's 2 laps down. We'll see how he got himself in this position. It's been here for a while, actually. He might have been at the inside of somebody else. Ooh, got tagged by the 48 car, Cristobal Rodriguez. That's such a sharp corner and a pinch point for sure. It's just difficult to run through there side by side and not have contact.
Yeah, I think we might be seeing the reason that ALMS stopped running this layout as well, even in the prototype cars. But again, it's a challenge. Everyone's got to deal with the same conditions, and unfortunately, it's just looking like this is creating more chaos for other drivers that would have otherwise been innocent bystanders. That driver continued to go, and somehow these two, wait, is that Alessandrini and
it is
Seal? No, it is
Babin.
and Babin teamed up now.
And this is for 10th overall, or excuse me, in MX-5, so Seal will go on by. He's gotten that car cleaned up, has made a trip down the pit lane, gotten a fresh body hung on that car pretty fast, and is back out now trying to salvage what he can. Alessandrini is a lap down. He has not yet. Actually, he has hit pit lane and gotten re-hit again. He was the other car involved in that turn 1 incident with the Mustang leaders.
Yeah, he's been involved in at least 3 tonight as the cars continuing to go off. We have 11.5 minutes left in this one, so closing in on 2/3 done. In the books, Alessandrini picking up another position. Unfortunately, both of our top MX-5s not a factor. Both of our top, one of our top Mustangs still a factor, but a lot of attrition. And it's a big surprise, the number of the cars that are up in the top. It's exciting to see, too.
Cameron Bidwell has a 7.9 second lead on Pallotta, working through some Miata traffic here. He's been placing his car nicely tonight. Hasn't made any crazy moves or done any insane dive bombs other than the one he used to get by. At the time, I believe it was Pallotta potentially, but leads this race, and now he's got a pretty big buffer with 10 minutes to go. You can give up almost a second a lap and still not get caught by Andrew Pallotta, so no need to push or rush the issue here.
Yep, basically no forcing of any issues for now for Cameron Bidwell. And again, thinking back to our keys to the race, it's all about traffic management, and a lot of the incidents that we've seen tonight were not necessarily under control for anybody to deal with, but Cameron Bidwell has done the perfect job, other than that little moment,
that was a touch,
to not deal with any of those issues.
It was a touch with the 57 car, Mark Hammond, at the exit of the final corner. Just caught him in the left rear quarter panel. That could end badly. Brake rotor's glowing. He goes by some more traffic and now has a bit of a moment to breathe. Sebastian and Forrest Landy running 4th and 5th at the moment. They're going to battle for position between some traffic on the front stretch.
Threading the needle, a big draft for the green car behind, but lifts early to tuck in. Another good decision in general. I think if you don't know you have it, don't even try here at Lime Rock from what we've seen tonight. So 10 minutes to go, a third of this race done, and now they're going to start to continue to work through this MX-5 traffic.
77 at Merker's going to put Sebastian Landy offline. It's going to open the door for Forrest on corner exit. Drag race down the backstretch now.
Oh, and he's going to get a pick from this MX-5, who does, he lifts again. So the heavy damage on the front of Forrest Landy's 4-car. It looks like the straight line is just not helping him at all, as this group of Mustangs and Miatas just can't get away from each other.
Into West Bend, around the outside of Merker. This is going to get really tough here. Merker's got to leave enough space on exit. Landy jumps on the brakes. Is that Will Robbins behind him? No, it is not. It's a lap down Mustang. The Marlboro car.
I think it's Obadia.
It is Obadia, who is in 14th, a lap down. And now they'll work by Merker. Pallotta 8 into Bidwell's lead. It's now 6.3 seconds there, Tom. But is there any realistic opportunity for Pallotta to catch that leading 56 car?
Well, I think it's both a long shot and very realistic. From what we know of this race, things happen very quickly, and you can lose a lot of time very quickly. So, again, Bidwell has every opportunity to win this one, every opportunity to be patient, but he could find himself in one of those bad positions just as quickly. So Pallotta is clearly the faster car. Something happened that last time through, only because we know he qualified on pole anyway. Last time through, something must have happened that allowed him to claw a little bit of that back, but now it looks like Pallotta might be stuck somewhere, and he's lost every single amount that he clawed back.
Yep, and for the lead in GMX5, Jamison Huffman leads over Sam Scott by 0.4 of a second. Richard Spicer 0.3 behind. I'm surprised that Spicer hasn't been able to drive through Sam Scott yet. He seemed like he was so much faster that when he got to the 98, it's been a brick wall that he has not been able to break down just yet.
Sure, and now they're back to the back bumper of Huffman, who is giving a nice draft to the damaged 98. So Scott with the draft on the back of Huffman. Spicer now has no straight line advantage over him. Maloney's way back, so it's a top 3 battle, but as always with MX-5s, 3 of them in the fight here, and it's going to be really interesting to see who has the longevity and the good decision making to make this one last, because they have some of the Mustang leaders coming up on them.
Well, we're going to split 3 wide. There is Pilata working his way through, and he's going to have to be mighty patient here, which is going to be frustrating on a charge back to the front. 2-car in the lap down Morgan Burkhardt. And he's going to move over and let Pilata on through. I don't think he's going to get that grace sent any more times this lap. I think he's going to have to work pretty hard to get by this battle amongst the front podium here in GMX5.
Yeah, these next 3 positions all for the lead, but Pilata's going to try for one of them. Nope, ducks in behind Spicer, so it's going to be almost another lap before Pilata gets an opportunity to move up in front of any of these front runners in MX-5, which is going to be horrible for his progress, because he's probably going to lose maybe a second or more to the leader of Bidwell. You can see that time already tumbling on the left side of your screen.
Jamison Huffman only has 2.5 tenths of a second back to Sam Scott. He's got the second place Mustang charging through this lead battle. Gets up onto the curbing with the left side tires. Got to make sure you don't catch the grass. Sam Scott so close. 6 minutes and 45 seconds left.
Scott continuing to show he's got the cornering speed, but not the straight line speed to make anything happen. Pilata has split Spicer and Scott, so now there's a little bit of a gap between second and third. Maybe this is Scott's opportunity to get up and rattle Huffman, because he has no pressure from behind, and the Mustangs are going to easily motor past both of them down this front straightaway. I suspect we'll see Pilata on the right here in just a moment.
Yeah, there he goes. And it's going to box in the 3-car just a little bit. He can't get by this lap traffic, but looks like Pilata's not going to have much of an opportunity either. They're going to clear themselves off the racetrack. Self-cleaning turn number 1 here at Lime Rock, and through goes Pilata. And Huffman now still defending from the 98.
That was tense. Pilata stuck Huffman on the outside through through Big Bend, and Scott couldn't quite do anything with it. And now Spicer has really got a bunch of cars who are rejoining, kind of throwing him off. He has to deal with all of them through the first couple of corners, and has lost 5 or 6 car lengths to the back of the top 2 battles. So he's got a lot of work to do as they're continuing to bicker amongst themselves. Alessandrini pushing the number 2 car Burkhardt through, but the lead battle is down to 2 cars for the moment.
And nothing happening in Mustangs at the moment, so we're going to focus on the battle for the lead in GMX5. 5 minutes to go, 6 laps left to go this time by the line. And all it takes is one wrongly placed car, like right at the exit of the final corner. If you time that just a little bit wrong, you can get yourself picked off. Sam Scott can just drive right on by. So Huffman's got to be very cautious on where to place this car. You mentioned earlier, at 14, you're still developing your racecraft skills, but Huffman has been doing a pretty good job tonight of placing that car where it's not in harm's way. Doesn't have a lot of damage on that machine, and it shows.
Yeah, he's done a perfect job of managing this race with very little mistake and very little time lost. We see in the corners that Scott tends to be the quicker car, but Huffman hasn't really put a foot wrong anywhere as far as what he can deliver in this race, and it's paying off for him right now. I think he's got every opportunity to continue to maintain this point, because he does have the stronger car down the straight lines, and he's got a very good decision-making process happening right now. He's probably learned where he can make moves, where he can place his car throughout the last 25 minutes, and knows exactly where the Mustangs will be when he wants to put them there and how to make them go where he wants. So he really only has to manage any attack that Scott might be able to mount, and he's really kind of put together a great run.
Well, Sam Scott is no rookie, though, and he's probably studying Jamison Huffman and trying to figure out where that car is weak, where Huffman is placing it even just an inch or 2 wrong, and that's going to be an opportunity for Sam Scott to drive by. Seems like right now he's being pretty patient with it, but also climbing up on the curb, which tells me he's just trying to find where Huffman is a little bit weak. You see, through turn 1, Sam Scott gains a little bit of ground and then loses it through turn 3 here.
Mentioned it early on that the greatest passing opportunity, the only obvious passing opportunity here at Lime Rock is down into Big Bend, that turn 1 braking zone. And unfortunately for Scott, with all the damage he's got on that car, you saw that he gets a little bit of a draft. He gets to close a little bit up to the leader of Huffman, but he can't get much closer than that. So he's going to need a big run, or maybe even a mistake from the 3 car to get an opportunity to make this thing happen, which is why I think Huffman is really in a really great spot right now. They have not a lot of cars around them either, coming to maybe 3 laps to go, maybe even 2 laps to go. So this is a good spot for them to be. As I say that, though, slower little traffic.
47 car offline. on the inside. Huffman is able to juke to the left and miss it. But something like that could be the chaos that Sam Scott needs to make a move here. 3 minutes left. No challenges happening in the Mustang field right now. All the focus is at the pointy end of GMX-5.
That was actually a great run through the third sector for Huffman. He closed up or gained a couple of car lengths, but then Scott closes it right back up. They've got the third place car in Mustangs, Murphy Nichols right behind. See how patient he gets. Maybe he even splits them down no-name straightaway this time. The Mustangs fast enough to close up. Maybe this gaff get alongside Scott, which would be race ending for Scott. He's going to protect.
And Murphy Nichols not going to make the move there.
Gentlemanly move.
Yeah, he might wait. I think he knows that there's not really any chance that he's going to catch Pilata in the last couple laps here, so he might let these guys race it out. But look how racy it's getting at the front. Dive up the inside of the lap traffic for Huffman into West Bend. Real tight there, and Scott's going to get juked to the outside and put almost into the grass. That's a huge loss of time for Scott.
Yeah, I think that's about it for Huffman's race. It's the 46 of, I think that's Kaufman, that was not quite sure where to go. You could tell he wanted to disappear but didn't know how to do it, and in that decreasing braking zone, it was Huffman that found a way by. Again, he's not put a foot wrong. Every opportunity he's gotten to make a choice, he has made the correct one, and Scott has now dropped it back 5 or 6 car lengths, and I don't think it's going to happen for him.
That was a veteran move, the way that he handled that traffic that time through. That could have gone so much more poorly than it did, so big ups to Jamison Huffman. Minute and 45 left. How about for 4th place in Mustangs? Sebastian Landy and Forrest Landy have once again found each other on the racing surface with a whole bunch of traffic. This could get spicy here before it doesn't.
Yeah, can't find away from each other. As they're going to get at least 2 more laps, I think, across the start-finish line next time. Allison Drini is the car in front. He's protecting. He's trying to pick off. Is that for position, the 3 car in front of Allison Drini at the back of MX-5s?
Allison Drini is trying to catch the 2 car, Morgan Burkhardt, which looks like that would be for position. Yes, you're right, Tom. And the 48 car is also there, and the 46. So there's a couple positions that DJ can pick up here.
So that explains the defense. The Blue Miata you saw poke out, try to say, no, don't pass me here. It didn't quite pay off for him. He had to relinquish that position. But now the cars that he was trying to battle get also balked, and Allison Drini gets a big run. The Landys both get a run down the front straightaway. Things are jumbling big time in the bottom of MX-5 and for the top 5 in Mustang.
Reshuffle the deck again through turn number 1. Forrest Landy goes up the inside. DJ's alongside Burkhardt. 3 wide. The 47 car is not for position. He's 3 laps down. Bit of a bobble there. The 2 car hangs onto it through turn number 3. Alessandrini on driver's right. And a Mustang, that's Obadia, to his left.
More Mustangs joining the battle. Alessandrini gets hung out in the left-hander, but then gets the inside for the right-hander, shuts the door on the 47. I don't think that car was for position in the battle, so he's lost touch with the next car he might be able to pick up a spot for.
Chow through Roman for 9th place. And checking in briefly where our race leader is, he's coming across the line. Bidwell, white flag one more time around Lime Rock Park. Jamison Huffman leads Sam Scott by 0.6 of a second, but that gap is dropping here with Sam Scott closing in as we hit the white flag lap.
Wow, it was over a second, and now it's back to half a second. That was a big shift in the last lap alone for the top of MX-5. Also in Mustang, it's down to 5 seconds, so it's still not done for Bidwell. He's got to be really patient. But this battle in MX-5 is certainly not done, as they have a couple of lapped cars in front.
And Burkhardt and Kaufman, whoa, and Alessandrini. This is for 13th in class on the outside of Obadia. This is going to get a little bit rough and tumble, maybe. DJ's going to sneak up the inside of the 46. Trying to grab that spot away. Out front, though, for Cameron Bidwell. He's going to bid farewell to everybody else behind him as he comes out of the final corner. In this race, Cameron Bidwell started in 3rd, past the 2 drivers in front of him as they tangled in turn number 1. Cameron Bidwell wins round number 1 in the Ford Mustang in the DC region SCCA Virtual Racing League. Pilata will come home in 2nd. Jamison Huffman and Sam Scott, final couple corners here, Tom. It's the 14-year-old of Huffman who prevails and makes every veteran move as he comes out of the final corner. Jamison Huffman is going to win at Lime Rock Park.
It's a long wait for that start-finish line, but we know it's going to happen. Huffman picks up that first round win of 4 rounds in the championship, a huge breath into his momentum for this series. And Scott, a valiant effort with a very broken race car. I got to tip my hat. That's a very frustrating position to be in. He made the most of it. And Spicer, not quite able to stick with the battle, but hangs on for 3rd after Maloney somehow, from a damaged race car through the pit lane, comes back for 4th.
Impressive run for Maloney. Murphy Nichols, by the way, how about a podium for the number 5 Smoketown Brewing Station car? Not a scratch on it either. Nicely done by Murphy Nichols to come home in one piece. That was easier said than done tonight for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then the Landys battling between the two, entertaining us all the way to the end. I almost felt like we were playing road racing plus Yahtzee tonight. You kind of shake the dice and hope for the best coming into that one, but super entertaining and really unpredictable, which always makes for the most fun for us.
That was something to be sure. Here's a look at your race results. At the top of the board, it's Cameron Bidwell, the number 56, and Andrew Pilata, Murphy Nichols, Sebastian Landy, Forrest Landy, 4th and 5th. Peter Lausen came home in 7th. Elias Roman, remember that big stack up at the top of the hill? He ended up coming out in 10th, so he rebounded pretty nicely. Moving on to Francois Brou in 11th, Tom Reynolds in 12th. Huffman, 13th overall and first in class. His first race in the series lands him a win as a 14-year-old. Pretty impressive. Scott and Spicer, the rest of the podium in GMX5. Maloney and LaRose, 4th and 5th. But the big story, the two leaders, the drivers that started in the front row, Alessandrini and that of Ken House-Seal, did not end up where they wanted. Neither of them inside the top 5.
No, 7th and 15th. So what we think is potentially predictable may start to come true a little later in this series, but it starts off with a completely jumbled and very interesting race. A couple more drivers with struggles. Jack Chrissy had gotten turned a couple of times. Morgan Burkhardt, unfortunately, not as lucky or skilled or both as his teammate for the night, not necessarily getting the decisions paid off for him. And then a number of our front runners in Mustangs, Kyle Herbst, Paul Gibson, both down there at the bottom. They just called it quits very early on.
In a moment, we're going to try to talk to a few of these drivers. We're going to try to get our podium for Mustangs, and we're going to try to get our top 2 for GMX5. It will be 5 drivers here we'll talk to as soon as we get a chance to. In just a moment, we'll take you to them. The first driver we're going to chat with is going to be Murphy Nichols, who finished 3rd in the Smoketown Brewing Station Ford Mustang. Murphy, not a scratch on that car. It was a wild race out there, but you brought it home P3. Take us through your night.
Absolutely. It was definitely a good race. I qualified P5. I was happy with that. I thought I could have gotten a little bit higher, but at the same time, I was really happy with where I started. It was a little bit chaotic at the start. The setup was very loose to begin with, but I knew that going in. I had one scary moment where, for some reason, an ad popped up on my computer and nearly took me out of the race, but somehow I kept the car on track and kept it going. And then just kind of let the chaos happen in front of me. I was trying to be easy with traffic and just try to find the flow of Lime Rock, if you can find that, I guess, and just keep the car on track, keep it clean, and bring it home a podium.
Well, really solid run for you, Murphy. Next week, or next round, in 2 weeks, I should add, we're jumping into the GT3 cars, so that's a bit of a change of pace. Your thoughts on that season, and is Group 1 or Group 2 the pack of cars that you're looking most forward to this year?
I think they're both going to have their very good moments, and they're both going to have their very iffy moments. I think today, especially in this group, was sort of an iffy moment, but that's just because of the track and style. Like this configuration isn't really ran well. I think the GT3s are going to be very good. We ran a couple seasons ago, and I remember having some very good battles in that season, and I'm excited to see how it looks with more cars, new GT3s from last season, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
All right, Murphy Nichols in the Smoketown Brewing Station, number 5, 3rd place podium in the Mustangs. Murphy, congrats. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks.
All right, move on now. The next driver I got my eyes on would be Cameron Bidwell, who was our race winner in Mustangs. It was chaos and confusion, Cameron, but drove away in the closing moments. Take us through what you saw at the windshield, because it must have looked like a firework factory going up in smoke there. Cars, explosions, smoke clouds, and everything, but you came through and prevailed. Take us through your night.
Hey, Kyle. Yeah, it was definitely crazy. I for sure wasn't the fastest car out there tonight, but just putting your car in the right spot, I guess, when people are flying around you is definitely the way to finish at Lime Rock, or Lime Wreck, like people like to say. So the track definitely lived up to its name. Still got hit a couple times. I want to say the last 5 minutes I was driving with a 20-degree steering angle because my car was damaged from that. So just trying to hold on, and ended up finishing first, so it was a good night.
Well, round number 1 took us to Lime Rock, this tight and twisty combination. Our next round with these cars will be at Watkins Glen Cup. That's going to look a lot different. How confident do you feel about the Mustang at that Cup configuration of Watkins Glen, and do you think it's going to look similar or be a little bit more straightforward out there in the Glen?
Well, for me, the Glen's one of my favorite tracks in general to race on, and I think it's the same for a lot of other people. It's extremely fast. he can really lean on the Mustang out there. So I expect there to be a lot of lead changes and some really good driving out there at the Glen. So looking forward to that one.
All right, Cameron Bidwell, 3rd to 1st in Mustangs. Congratulations. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
All right, next driver I got my eyes on. I don't think we've got anybody in MX-5 except for Jamison Huffman, 14-year-old who took his first win in his first race. Jamison, congratulations. A wild night for you. You started pretty deep in class, but passed everybody with some dramas up in front. You managed to hold off Sam Scott and make expert moves. Take us through your night, the charge forward, and your win here at Lime Rock Park.
Thanks for that. It was. I'm still shaking from that. It was kind of just trying to not overkill the tires and not send it off track and keep Sam behind me for most of the race.
Tonight, there were so many cars on track. It's such a small racetrack. I'm sure you learned a lot about the racecraft here in this multi-class format. I was just talking with Cameron Bidwell from the Mustang lead podium. We head to Watkins Glen in a couple weeks, actually about a month. And the Glen is a much bigger racetrack. What did you learn tonight that you think will transfer, or is it going to be a totally different learning experience in WGI?
I think it should. Some stuff will definitely carry over, just waiting for the right move and making sure I get a right run and I can pass without wasting too much time. Because we did have some instances where P3 did catch up to us and then we slowly broke away again.
Well, Jameson, we got to wish you a huge congratulations. That was a spectacular drive forward in your OG Racing sponsored car. You've got DC Region on the back of that, so congratulations for that win, and best of luck to you. Are you running the GT3 cars, and which car are you picking for our first round coming up here in a few weeks?
I am going to be running the GT3. I think I'm going to most likely go with the Lamborghini. I don't know if me and Morgan will be working together again. Most likely we will be in the all-sports car, but
all right, well, Road Atlanta in a Lamborghini. We'll see Jamison Huffman next. Congratulations, and we'll see you there. All right, that will conclude the interviews. Didn't get our last step on the podium finishers for either of the classes, Tom, but tonight was something, we'll say, to say the least. A lot of chaos and confusion out there, especially in the early going. But once we got our groove in, there was some pretty solid racing all over the racetrack.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's going to set us up for some great momentum and also a lot of good talking points coming into the rest of the series, because we do have, again, a little bit of a different shape for this Group 1 as we move into some more traditional tracks. But the focus shifts pretty heavily, pretty drastically to Road Atlanta and GT3 cars for the next round. That's considered Group 2. It's a separate championship, but I suspect we'll see a lot of the same names. Can the names that surprised us tonight continue to surprise us, or are we going to see a lot of those known names return to the top in the GT3 machines? We'll have to wait and see until March 3rd.
It'll be 2 weeks from now, yes, March 3rd for Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for the DC Region Virtual Racing League. Round 2, but this time it'll be with Group 2 in the GT3 cars. Next week, right here on Sim TV, it'll be the Spec MX-5s Sim Racing Challenge over the Winding Road YouTube channel from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course on February 24th. Tomorrow night, SCAR Super Trofeo and Prototype Challenge from Road America, the National Park of Speed. And we'll be over on the Porsche Twitch channel for the first round of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge Canada. So make sure you join us over there. Super cool initiative that they've got going on, where the winners of each category, Caymans and 911 Cup cars, will get a chance to go to Porsche driving school. So that's on the line tomorrow from Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Gorman. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for Group number 2.